Okay, guys. Yeah, just can you tell me once? I'm audible. Can you just give me a reply, simple letter like C or N, so that I can start? Thank you. Thank you. That's it. Okay, then yes, thank you. I can start. See, basically, we are just creating some simple Spring Boot applications before we enter into the concepts like Spring Boot, data JP, and all those kind of things. Basically, I told you just we'll start with a Spring Boot with a Spring JDBC. In the last session, we just got an information like this. Whenever you are creating any application in Java, and we know that if it wants to perform any operations on database, it's initially need a connection with the database, correct? So there is a driver manager class and there is a data source interface. These are the two options available. Okay, so driver manager class can be used to get a physical connection with the database. And when you look at the data source interface, yeah, it can be used to get the connection from pool. Okay, so Spring uses data source object to obtain a connection with the database. And I would like to tell you now, of course, you are aware of this, but still I just want to tell you, whenever you are creating any Spring DO class and you want to use Spring JDBC to perform CRUD operations or to execute some SQL queries on database. Correct. If that is the case, if for example, if you want to do like that, then you have to, your class needs to depend on JDBC template object. So basically what I'm trying to say is no, first of all, the point which I like to add here, driver manager object or driver manager class can provide physical connection, right? Can provide a physical connection with the database. Okay. Driver manager class can provide a physical connection with the database. Okay. And if it is a data source object, then it can provide, okay, can provide a connection from a pool. It's a logical connection we can call. Can provide a logical connection from a pool. So these points will basically use it to recollect something. Okay, right, good. Basically, Spring uses a data source object to obtain a connection with the database. And do remember in Spring JDBC API, so basically Spring JDBC API is nothing but it is an abstraction on our JDBC API. Right, okay. And which I can say basically, we no need to directly work with the low-level JDBC API. So there is an abstraction given on top of the JDBC API, that is Spring JDBC API, right? And this Spring JDBC API just will provide us only the required things. Required things, I mean, you no need to worry about the underlying things like loading the driver classes or establishing connection with the database or closing a connection with the database and creating some statement objects to execute queries. These things are low-level details. So these low-level details are hidden and only will provide the necessary details which can be used by you to perform database operations. So that is nothing but abstraction layer, right? So basically, okay. Basically, what I would like to explain you guys is Spring JDBC API is an abstraction layer on the Java JDBC API. We can call the word like that. And in Spring JDBC API, you are just going to concentrate on the query. Whatever the query that you want to execute on the database, you are just going to concentrate on your query. And second thing is, you are just going to think about what you want to do with the result. Okay, so what is the query that you want to execute and what you want to do with the result of the query? That is what only you need to think in Spring JDBC. But you don't need to think on the low level details like creating various objects like connection object or a statement or a prepared statement object or a result set object or even other objects like closing the objects like a result set or statement or connection. So you don't need to worry about these low level details. Okay. So we can say Spring JDBC API is an abstraction layer on Java JDBC API. Okay. So basically what happens in Spring JDBC? So basically what I'm writing is so in Spring JDBC, okay, generally we are not directly working with JDBC API nowadays because we have ORM tools and we are going to work with Spring Data JPAs in our SpringBoot applications. But still there are some cases where if in case any DAO classes are created through Spring JDBC API, if you have an idea on that, that's going to give a good advantage. So that's the reason why I'm talking about this. Okay. So Spring JDBC API is an abstraction layer on the Java JDBC API. So in Spring JDBC API, you have to just concentrate on the query that should be executed and the result of the query and what you want to do with the result. Okay, what you would like to do on the result. That's it. Guys. So in Spring JDBC API, you have to concentrate on the query that should be executed on and what you would like to do with the result of the query. That's it, guys. And you don't need to worry about the low level details. And one more thing I would like to write here, then I can say something. In Spring JDBC, actually, there is one template class provided. The template class name is actually called JDBC template. I can say that what? JDBC template class is the main class in Spring JDBC API to perform CRUD operations or to execute SQL queries. So to run SQL queries from your DO class. Okay. Right. Yeah, guys. So some points I have included so that at least you'll get some basic idea with this. Okay. Coming to the example. Okay. There is one starter we need to include now. Basically, the starters required in our form.xml, right? So the starters required in form.xml. Okay, required in form.xml. One is what? SpringBoot starter JDBC. Next one is SpringBoot. It's not SpringBoot. Depends on database. Say for an example, I'm connecting with MySQL. Then I have to use MySQL dependency, MySQL driver dependency. Okay, right? And if I'm connecting with Oracle, then Oracle driver dependency. So in my currently in my system, I think I have Oracle. I don't have MySQL. I think so. Just let me check. Okay, I can connect with Oracle also. It's not a problem. Okay, so I don't have any MySQL. So, okay, do one thing. I will connect with Oracle, don't worry. So one is Spring Boot starter JDBC dependency is required. And even I need Oracle driver dependency. So basically, guys, these are the two starters that we required. One is a Spring Boot starter JDBC, that is one dependency. And the other dependency is what? Oracle driver dependency. I can say that what basically these are the two dependencies what we need. One is a Spring Boot starter JDBC dependency. The next one is the Oracle driver dependency. Okay. Let's start. Okay. One small example. What I would like to do is I would like to create one DAO class. I mean, first I'll create one DAO interface, and then I will write one implementation class called DAO IMPL. Okay. And let's run the methods, DAO methods from our command line runner, because immediately once a Spring container is started in our Spring Boot project, I would like to call the DAO operations and let us check whether these operations are properly working or not working. Correct. So that's the reason why what I do, I will create first what DAO class. I mean, first I'll create a DAO interface where we just declare the methods, right? Then we write the DAO implementation class where we define the methods logic. And then we'll start creating a runner component. It may be application runner or it may be the command line runner, whatever it is. Okay. We want to call the DAO operations from the Spring Boot runner. So whenever we execute our application, once application context is started in Spring Boot project, then we know that command line runner or application, whatever, that Spring Boot runner is triggered. So that Spring Boot runner will invoke the DAO operations, and we can able to see the result of the DAO operations on our console, right? So that is the process. So let's start with writing some application today. And this is just for another practice. So here we are going to write the data source properties in the application.properties file. So when you're in Spring Boot, we no need to configure data source object. Okay. We no need to create a bean method to produce data source object that should be managed by the Spring container. And even we no need to create any bean method to create or produce a JDBC template object. Okay. And that object is going to be managed with Spring container. Actually, if you're not working with Spring Boot, you have to do them. But in Spring Boot, we know auto configuration concept, right? So that is what advantage in Spring Boot. What most of the configurations of our application will be automatically done by the Spring Boot itself. If any small configurations are required, that we do it, and that too very less times. But maximum all the configurations are taken care by Spring Boot only. In Spring Boot, we know the advantage of Spring Boot, like automatically the configurations are made for the application. And second, starter dependencies, embedded servers, actuators, like that I told, some advantages are there, the Spring Boot. So what you have to do next is you have to write one file. That file name is application.properties file. Generally, whenever you create any Spring Boot application in IDE, automatically there is a file generated in the src/main/resources folder. The file name is application.properties. The file name is application.properties. That file contains data source properties like driver class name, driver URL, nothing but database URL, then database username and password. Got it, right? So where do I configure the data source properties in Spring Boot now? In a file called application.properties. So what I'm saying now, you have to configure the data source properties for the application. Okay, data source properties for the application in application.properties file. Guys, you have to configure the data source properties for the application in application.properties file. Okay. What are the data source properties I need to configure? You have to configure like this. The properties are like this now. What is it? For example, spring dot data source dot driver class name. Okay, then you can just configure your Oracle driver or MySQL driver. Then the next property you need to configure spring dot data source dot URL. You can configure the URL over there. And next I can say, for example, spring dot data source dot username. So then I can configure what? Spring dot data source dot password. Got it, right? This is called driver class name. Then we have the URL, then we have username, and then we have password. We can call these as what? Application properties file. Spring dot data source dot driver class name. Then we have URL here. Then we have username there. And finally, we have what, guys? Password. Correct? So we have 4 properties like this. Right? Let's move ahead, guys. Let's move on. Okay. Just I would like to get a confirmation from your end. Guys, you got the concept, right? How we can add Spring JDBC application now? Let's create the application, guys. Sure, guys, we'll go ahead. Let's create a 4th application today. So we are just going to choose option called what? Spring Starter project. And in our project, actually what we do is we just want to write 04. And let's say, for example, it is boot app. And it's a JDBC. Okay. And remaining all as it is. Okay, if you want, you can change the package name as com.ashokit. Okay, you can write sample, otherwise you can say demo. It doesn't matter, whatever it is. Okay. Just I would like to use my base package name as com.ashokit. Sample or app application, something. Okay. This is my base package. I just want to use com.ashokit.app. Then we go ahead with the next. Here you need to understand. I would like to choose JDBC. First, I'm typing here in the available section JDBC. And I choose this JDBC API. And do remember this, guys. JDBC API means Spring JDBC. Again, Spring Data JDBC, this is again a different one. Okay. So we are not discussing about Spring Data JDBC. We are discussing about Spring JDBC with SpringBoot. Okay. So choose JDBC API. Just I would like to repeat this point. Next one, I would like to use Oracle driver. So choose the 2 dependencies now. One is JDBC API. Next one is Oracle driver. Okay. Then you click on next. Then you can go ahead with finish. Okay, guys. Now let's go ahead now. Yeah. We are not yet entered into Spring Data JDBC. Means we have not entered into, first of all, Spring Data. So after this Spring JDBC example, we will start with understanding about what is Spring Data JPA. So then we can see what is Spring Data JDBC and Spring Data JPA. Okay. But currently we are working with a simple Spring JDBC with SpringBoot. Let's go ahead, guys. Let us open form.xml. You can see the two dependencies over there. One is a SpringBoot starter JDBC is the new dependency included in this form.xml. And the other dependency that is included is OJDBC 8. This is for Oracle driver. Okay. And do remember this. This is SpringBoot starter for JDBC. And this is OJDBC 8 dependency. This is the jar file for Oracle driver. Okay. And you know already some part of Maven. Scope runtime means this dependency will be used to run the application. Means this dependency is included in the class path at runtime. And if you don't include scope tag, suppose if you look at here, we are not having any scope tag. If you don't have scope tag, it's meaning it will be included at compile time in a class path and also included at the runtime in class path. Means it is used in both, like when you are compiling the application and when you are executing the application for both. So here we go. We have a dependency tag and we have a group ID and artifact ID. And here is the dependency tag. We have a group ID, artifact ID with the scope also available. Okay, next. And do remember, if you're not including a scope tag in any dependency, if you're not finding it or if you're not writing it, the default value of the scope tag is compile. Compile means that dependency is used in class path at compiling the application and also is kept in the class path to run the application. That's what the meaning of scope compile. Next. Basically, first what I like to do is, if you open src/main/resources folder, you can see one file. That file name is application.properties. It's an empty file. You can see there is nothing inside. So basically, whenever we start the SpringBoot application, this file gets loaded automatically. Application.properties file is automatically loaded. So all the configuration properties are loaded by default from the application.properties. If you would like to change the name, we can change it. If you change the file name as some other file, myfile.properties, then we need to explicitly load it by using annotation called @property source. So @property source annotation can be used for that. Okay, right. Let's move on. Okay, guys, observe it. I'll tell you. Guys, let's go ahead. Spring.dataSource.driver class name. And I'm writing oracle.jdbc.driver.oracle driver. Then I'm writing spring.dataSource.url. So I should type manually jdbc:/oracle:/thin at localhost, means because my database server and it's running on local machine, so localhost, and the port number is 1521, and the database name is XE because I have installed Express Edition version of the Oracle. So XE is the name, database name. So next one, you need to provide the username also. And do remember that, okay, username is a system. and spring.datasource.password. And password, I have, at the time of installing, I gave tiger as a password. Okay, let's configure these properties: driver class name, URL, username, and password. Okay. So these are the properties you need to configure in the application or properties file. Then I want to save it. Next, I will go ahead. So after adding these properties, what is the next step I have to do? I want to write one DAO class. So first I will create an interface, then I'll let implementation class. So let's create a new package first. So com.ashokit.app.do. Let's create a new interface over there. It's not a class, it is an interface. Okay. com.ashokit.app.do. It is an package. And inside this package, I just want to create an interface. I'm not creating a class, I'm creating an interface, right? So let me create an interface over there. The interface name is something, say for example, EMPDAO. And I just want to write the code like this. So I can say void. Okay. I just want to say that insert employee or save employee. And pass the employee details. Suppose I have EMP table with 4 columns. I want to insert employee number, employee name, salary, and department number. So I can take the 4 parameters and I can insert those values, right? So let's say int employee number. Let's say string ename. Let's say double sal. Let's say int department. Okay. And one more, I just want to fetch an employee based on ID. Basically, I'm using return type as a map. I'll tell you, map of string comma object. That is generic types we are using, and that's the return type. And method name is fetch emp or employee by ID. Pass the employee number, and based on the employee number, I would like to fetch the employee. Currently, 2 operations have included. Later, we'll update. We'll add more operations to our interface, like update employee or delete employee or fetch employees, like that. We can just write some additional things. Okay. Currently, I just want to simply write only this much. Only 2 methods. One is a save employee, and other one is the fetch employee by ID. That's all. Okay. I don't want to write any more things. Just I would like to write only 2 things. One is to save an employee, and other one is to fetch an employee from database by using their IDs. Cool, right? This is a DAO interface, but we should start writing an implementation class for this, right? So I just want to create another package to write the implementation class. com.ashokit.app.dao.impl. Correct. And I would like to write one class over there, not interface, it's a class, EMPDAO.impl. And just add an interface into this box by clicking on add button. You can choose your interface implementation, that is EMPDAO. This is the interface we are implementing into this class. Then I say finish. And understand here, I just want to write an annotation called @repository. It is a stereotype annotation. No? Right. Actually, I cannot add component also. But I said already there is a difference between writing component and add component means it is a just general SpringBoot component in the project. And if you're at the repository, it is a component, but it works in DAO layer. So it's a DAO layer component. So the difference is what now between component and repository that you know already. This repository can perform what we can say exception translations. Database exceptions are converted to Spring exceptions. So that exception translation happens if it is declared as a repository component. If it is just declared as a general purpose component, then exception translation does not happen. Okay, so that's the reason why whenever we are writing any DAO class, we have to add either a repository annotation at the class level. And whenever you are writing any service class, you need to add annotation called what? @service. So you have something called @service and @repository. Are you clear? Now let's move on. Let's go ahead. Now this is my DAO class now. Let's say @autovide. JDBC template. Let's say JDBC template. And thing is now, are you configuring JDBC template as a bean in the Spring container? No. Because now we are working with Spring JDBC with SpringBoot now. So SpringBoot will automatically configure or will add JDBC template object, data source object in the Spring container. There are auto configuration classes in SpringBoot. They will add these objects in Spring container. So we no need to manually create any bean methods to add these objects in Spring container. Okay. So to the Spring container, we no need to add these bean add these objects by creating bean methods. So in SpringBoot, there are auto configuration classes, and those auto configuration classes will add these objects in Spring container. So that's an advantage in SpringBoot, right? Almost less configurations, very less. Okay. Let's perform the operations today. First, I like to perform save, and then I want to perform fetch employee. Okay. Okay, we can do one thing. I can create another class where I can define my queries, and in what we can call it as some constants class I can create. And I can define some public static final string variables there. Okay, and I can use them into my application. So whatever, it's not a big thing. We can do it just like that. Or here only we can declare our queries also. Generally, we maintain the queries at outside of the DAO class. In a separate class, we maintain all the queries of the application. So I'll do one thing. I will start creating a new one more package I'm creating here, com.ashokit.app.constants. com.ashokit.app.constants. One more package I've created, okay? And here I'm just writing one class like app constants. And I'm not declaring it as any Spring component. It means I'm not writing an annotation called @component, okay? Just it is a class, that's it. But do remember, this class is not a Spring Bean. I mean, this is not a Spring Bean class. So I no need to register this class in Spring container. Okay, it's a constant class where I'm declaring some public static final variables. So I'm declaring like this. What I'm declaring here, public static final string. Say for example, insert query equals to, or emp insert query equals to, And I just want to write the query over there, insert into table name EMP of EMPNO, ename, sal, DEPTNO, then values, and I can declare the values like the question marks. These are called parameters, right? Index parameters, we can call them. Like similarly, I'm just creating one more variable here, public static final string variable. Variable name is EMP select query. Suppose select one, for example. That's my variable name. And the query is select asterisk, or you can write complete query EMPNO, ename, sal, DEPTNO from EMP, where EMPNO equals to question mark. I've declared one constants class like this. And do remember, it is not a SpringBoot class. Observe it. I'm not writing any annotation called @component. Okay. It's not required. I'm not writing it. Because it is not a SpringBoot class. It's just a class in which we will like to add our constants. And it's not a SpringBoot component, and its life cycle is not managed by the Spring container. So unnecessarily, if you declare it as a component, then Spring container has to manage the life cycle of this bean, right? So we don't want to give unnecessary burden on the Spring container. So I don't want to declare it as a component. Just simply it is my own class. And this is one I can call it as a some utility class in our application, some utility class. Okay. Let's go ahead with the DO. So here, first I would like to perform insert. Okay, during insert, if I get any problem exception, then I would like to show that exception details. And if not, then I should get output like, okay, it's executed. So let's have a try block. And here, I just want to write JDBC template dot. We have a method called update. Basically, remember, update method can be used to perform three operations: insert, update, and delete. The three operations we can do with update method only. If you have any requirement to run create a table or alter command, such kind of commands, then you have to call execute method. So of course, I will add a comment here, you can understand, but see what the comment I'm writing is basically update method can be used to perform insert or update or delete database operations. Okay, so what's a query? First, I should pass the query, then I should pass the values to the query. The query I'm passing is app constants dot emp insert query. That's my query, right? And coming to the values, I'm passing what? Employee number I'm passing, then I'm passing ename, then I'm passing sal, then I'm passing department number. And if this is done successfully without any exception, just I would like to add one SOP statement. Later with log statements, but currently SOP. But I can say that employee is added in DB. And let's say, for example, there is an exception occurred, then control reaches to the nearest cache block. Then I say system.out.println, print that exception. Okay, this is my first method. Coming to the second one, it should return a map object, right? Sure. Let's see. The logic which I like that is there is a method called query for map. Basically, what happens is query for map method and query for list method. Generally, these are the two methods of JDBC template class. We will call them. One is to select single record, and other one is select multiple records. So now my requirement is I would like to select a single record with the matching employee number. So one record only I would like to select. If you want to select single record, then call query for map method. If you want to select multiple records, then you can call query for list method. Query for map and query for list. Got it right? The two methods. So here in my case, I need query for map method because I will select single record now. So I should call the method called what? Query for map method. So I will go ahead. I'm writing here. Query for map is method. Okay. Selects a single record. Okay. And what it returns, returns a map object. It returns a map which contains column names as keys, okay, and column values for the record, and a column values. Returns a map which contains column names as keys and column values as column values of record as values. Because we know map is a collection object where it can store the data as a key value pairs, right? We are mapping a key for each value. That's what mapping, right? Map object can be used to define mappings between keys and values. Right. So let's do one thing. Directly we can return statement. Otherwise, we can say something, whatever. Okay, return single statement. I'm writing return JDBC template dot query for map. So app constants dot select one. That is my select query and employee number, right? EMPNO. So you guys got the DAO class. Right? Just go through the DAO class once. I'll wait for a minute. Okay, no issue. Just have a glance on it. I think you might have gone through the code, right? Is it clear, guys? Now, by observing this code, you got an idea, right? Got it, right? This is just only we created two string variables. Yeah, that's it, guys. Okay, now I have created DAO class, and there are two operations in DAO we have defined. One is to save employee, and other one is to fetch employee by ID. But how can I test them in our application now? That's the reason why when you are working with the Spring Boot and when you're learning the basic applications, you can take the support of creating a Spring Boot runner. So my requirement is what I would like to test whether these DO operations are working or not working. So how can I able to test whether these DO operations are working or not working is very simple. I can go ahead. I can simply create one. What is that? I can write one runner component. And from that runner, I can call these operations. And we know that that runner is executed automatically once the application context is started in a Spring Boot project. Okay, so once immediately application context is started, there's a Spring container is started, then the runner component gets executed. So from runner, we can call the DO operations and we can able to see the result of the DO operations on our console, basically. So let's do that. Next component, what I'm writing today is creating one new package, right? And the package name which I would like to write is com.ashokit.app.runner. So I have something called what? com.ashokit.app.runner. This is my the package. Then I say new, and then I can say something like a class. Say it's a runner component, so just I can say sample runner or application runner, whatever it is. Okay, some component. So I say it's a sample component. And we want to implement it from application runner. Okay, you can use command line also, but better to go with application runner. And it must be registered as a component, right? Otherwise, if it is not registered as a component in Spring container, then once container is started, this component is not executed. If it is registered as a component, then only it will get executed, right? So how to register this as a component in Spring? How can I register this as a Spring Bean component in the container is by adding this annotation called component. Is annotation, right? Right. Okay. Now here, I would like to invoke DO operations now. So I do one thing. I'll auto-ware the DO object. EMP DO object I'll auto-ware. Correct. Let's call the methods. The first method I would like to call is EMP DAO dot save employee, pass 4 arguments. First, I like to show the employee records. I think I have already records in my table. Yeah. I can open SQL plus, or even I can go for SQL developer. SQL developer is the GUI client and SQL plus is the CUI client. If you have SQL developer, you can open it. If you have SQL plus, then you can open it. It's up to you. Now I'm just going to open SQL developer. This is the graphical user client for connecting with Oracle database. You have to download and install it separately. But if it is SQL plus, you will get it automatically whenever you download and install your Oracle software in your machine, right? So just want to close this welcome page. And here is I have a new connection, which I already created a connection with the name called new connection. By clicking on this plus button, you can create multiple connections. You can create one more connection, but I have already created a new connection and I just want to right click and I can say connect. Okay, if you are unaware of SQL developer, don't worry. Just open SQL Plus and just log in with your username and password and see, do you have EMP table or not? If not there, you do one thing, you create a new table, EMP table in the database with the columns, employee number, name, salary, and department number. Right? And it's your wish whether you want to connect with Oracle or MySQL. If it is MySQL, you can have MySQL Workbench. That is a GUI client, a graphical user client that you can use it. Okay. It's up to you whether you want to use Oracle or whether you want to use MySQL, and that's all up to you. Okay. This example, I'm using Oracle. Maybe in the next example, I'll use MySQL. Currently, MySQL is not installed in my machine. Okay, I will install it and we'll use MySQL for the next example like that. Anyway, our PostgreSQL we use, whatever, some database. Okay. I think so I have table. Otherwise, I can just get it from these tables. I have EMP table. And I have columns like EMPNO, ename, sal, and DEPTNO, right? I have already the EMP table with me. And if I want to select the data, then I can get the data also. I can say select star from EMP. Currently, I have only two records actually. One is Scott and other one is Miller. Let us include another employee with the name Blake, for example. Blake is the next employee that I'm just going to insert. Okay. Sure, we'll do that. The employee number I want to use is a 7654. And the name of the employee, that is Blake. And the salary I want to add is 4,699. And he is working for department number 20. And just I will have a separator. The next one, I would like to call the next method is empdao dot fetch employee by ID of 7788. Employee number I'm passing 7788. And actually which returns me a map object, no? So I can directly display the map on console as a key value pairs. That's okay. Otherwise, you can again start getting the entry set, getting the key, getting the value. Okay, first, I just want to write some result map equals to. Okay, currently I'm not writing any much code, simply SOP, and I want display that map on the console. Okay, I did write the code. Now let's package this application and then we run it. Here we can directly run, right click, run as SpringBoot app. We can do that. But I said the better option is what? Instead of executing your application from IDE, you better to execute it from outside of the IDE. That is nothing but from command prompt. Copy the location, cancel this window. Then you can go ahead for command prompt. Then you can say something like this. Now you have 04 boot app JDBC, right? Then what's the next? MBN clean package. We'll get a message called build success. So we need to wait for that. Wow, I got build failure. No problem, no issues. As a solution for this, I'll tell you, generally we are not working with the test cases now. You just do one thing. I'll tell you what you need to do is, you first go to the project in SRC test Java. You have the SRC test Java, right? This is the location where we can keep the test case files. Just open this package com.ashokit.app and just remove the test case code. Application test.java file is there now. Just please delete the file. Currently, we are not working with the test cases. You just delete the application test.java file. Right? Then you can simply, if you want, you can update the project once. Then you can say mbn clean package. Okay, now we got the response like build success. Yes, we got the response like build success over there. So as we know, we got a jar file in the target folder, but refresh the project once, right click refresh. Now see the target directory contains one jar file 04 boot app JDBC -1.o.jar. Okay, let's do one thing. Java space -jar space target slash it's 04 boot app JDBC -1.o is a version .jar. I got an exception. I will just find out what is the reason. Okay. I have insert into EMPNO unique constraint so and so violated, because maybe I think if you look at my table, it's a 7878 is the employee number and 7101 is another employee number. So we don't have any something like 7654. But we got an exception like that. It is saying that unique constraint so and so violated, duplicate key exception. Okay, let's see. Actually, I'm not inserting a duplicate key because I'm passing the number, which is 7654, not the number, which is, I mean, I can say it's, we don't have this actually. 7654, name is Blake, then salary, then department number. Okay, let me do one thing. I think maybe earlier I have deleted but not yet committed. Okay, just observe it. Where is unique constraint violated? I'm checking that. Okay, there is nothing more. Let me first of all verify what are the constraints applied on that. EMPNO, ename, sal, and TEPTNO. Okay, it is something like no. Means employee number is a primary key. Correct. Let me do one thing. Okay, no problem. Let's change the number to 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sure. Okay, let's try to run this application again. So first I would like to clean, again I would like to package. Because I did some change now, so clean package. Then execute the jar file. Okay, I think it is not for inserting, but maybe for fetching. It's we don't have any 7788. I say 7878. Because if you look at that, I have select start from EMP. Okay, we have 7878. Oh, Blake is already inserted, but again inserted. Okay. It's insert 2 times inserted. Okay, just a minute, guys. That's the reason why we are getting unique consent validated. Just a minute, guys. I will give you clarity on this. Don't worry. First, let me delete now. Delete from EMP where EMPNO equals to 1, 2, 3, 4. And 7654. I will do it again, and then I say commit. Done. Look at this case. Currently, I have data like this now. Select star from EMP. Only 2 records are there. Now I want to insert the new record with the employee number 7654. Blake. Earlier, I got an exception not because of this number, because of this number. I gave 7788, but I have 7878 in the database. Okay. Now this time we are not going to get an issue. Definitely we are going to get the result. But what should I do first? Clean package. Then I should go for what? I should go for execution, guys. I'm just going for execution what? Java -jar. This is a command I have to run. I'll press enter. Now we got the correct output now. So what's the output we got here? Employee is added to database. Yes. And we got the data of the employee number 7788. Sure. Let's go and verify whether do we have this employee. Once again, we'll run this query. Yes, now this Blake is added 7654 Blake, blah, blah, blah. We got this. Okay. This is how our example got executed. Got it, guys? Have you understood our example now? Okay.